Finding mission. I'm really pleased to see that we've got Bob Sager, a very good friend of mine in the last 18 months from the USA. And the purpose of this particular session is to give you the facts from entrepreneurs around the world, what they see, how they see the marketplace, what's really happening in their arena, and to give you their honest opinion of life as they see it. So without further ado, as Bob would love to jump straight into the questions, I'd like to ask Bob a very simple question at first, is how does he see the business environment? What's the biggest business challenge to businesses in America as you see it today?
Well, look, I think the biggest challenge today is waning employee engagement. I mean, you look at different studies that are done, and I know Gallup does a study either every year or every other year about employee engagement. And the sad but true tale is that employee engagement is at an all-time low. And that's what I see as probably the biggest challenge. And it's probably followed, Nev, by a lack of training in innovative and creative thinking. And in an era where anything that can be automated is being automated, even complex tasks that are decision tree oriented are being automated. And so, what is the one thing that human beings can do that computers can't do? And that's think imaginatively, think creatively. As Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge, because knowledge only tells you what currently is, and imagination is infinite. He called it a preview of the future. So, and sadly, that's really not being fostered and encouraged in our formalized school systems.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's a common theme, isn't it? That we want innovation, we want creativity, but we're the people that are stopping it for some reason. And the larger the business is, the more they want the creativity, the more they want the sustainability and growth. But sadly, they're not recruiting the people that's going to give them that challenge. So it comes on to the second question, really, about when businesses are struggling, as you say, with this lack of imagination and creativity. So what do they look for when they're hiring a new person, particularly with a bent towards a new recruit, a young person that's coming almost fresh from graduate school?
Well, I think job applicants have a little bit of a, not really a skewed view, but an unclear view of what employers are looking for. Employers are just consumers of talent, right? And so think about what you look for when you go to buy something at a grocery store, at a department store. You're looking to get the most value at the fairest price, or I should say the most for the least. And obviously, whoever's selling, they want to get the most, and whoever's buying wants to pay the least. And the happy medium is where you arrive at the price. So it's no different in paying for talent, in paying for manpower. Employers are looking for who offers them the most value. And it's not getting a degree and making good grades is not, you're led to believe by academia that that's the key, but it's really not. It's who brings something extra to the equation, right? Who is that person who is, I like to use an example in the training that we do about being commoditized. And the example I like to use, Nev, is if I'm driving down the road and I realize I need to put gasoline in my car, petrol where you are, right?
That's right.
And
Yeah.
there's a station on one corner, and there's a station on another corner, and a third station on the opposite corner, and one of them is a little bit less. That's the one I'm buying because gasoline is gasoline. It's a commodity. So this is true as a company. This is true as an employee who wants a promotion or is looking to get hired. What are you doing? What do you bring to the table that decommoditizes in the mind of the consumer? And in the case of in the case of job seekers, that's a hiring manager or the HR person they're interfacing with initially. What do you bring to the table that makes you stand out? Because a degree from a good school with good grades, everybody has that, right? So, what makes you different? What makes you not a commodity, and what makes you more valuable to that employer?
It is. It's come out. Definitely come out of the numbers game, which it was for many years. And as we all know now, because of, as you mentioned before, the automation that's gone through, employers are now got far more of a choice. More young people are going to university. There's lots of Me Too's with the same qualification. But I think we're touching on the point here that qualifications, as you said, it's a myth or a belief of the academic institutions that's going to get you the job. And I think the message that seems to be consistent, whoever I'm interviewing, is that's not what's happening today. So if you're a millennial, you need to have something else. This word talent needs to be something extra. Otherwise, you're just a graduate with a degree, and therefore you're a commodity. And it's sad to think of it that way, but maybe that's the kick we need, really, and we need to get the academics back thinking about producing work-ready individuals. So we've had a bit of a thought process there going on about we're not necessarily giving the right development to these young people. So what is it within the school system that we're failing on? What are we not providing these young people with, if indeed we could provide it in the education system?
Well, I think it could be, but I'm not sure it can be in the current structure because the school system, this is true in the UK, this is true in the US, that it's been tinkered with at the margins. But by and large, it really doesn't run any differently than it did about 100 years ago. And what around the world works exactly the same as it did 100 years ago? I mean, Neville, 15 years ago, we couldn't have been doing what we're doing right now.
Yes, very true. Very true.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, when I was growing up, and that's a long time ago now, but when I was growing up, the thought of connecting on a phone call with somebody in the UK or with somebody in Pakistan that's a foreign concept. I mean, to call another state within the United States was an expensive proposition. And not that you couldn't call overseas, you could, but it took 3 operators and cost a small fortune. Now we can do that for free. So if technology has allowed us to do some of those things, perhaps we need to use one of the principles that we teach in innovative thinking, which is go opposite. Write down everything about the education system and what's the opposite of that. Because if that's not working, and it clearly isn't, then why not consider the absolute opposite? And in what ways might that work? And forget the word impossible, because it's not impossible, right? I don't mean to go on a rant, but I see people coming out of the school system, whether that's high school or whether that's college or university, and they're full of hope, they're full of ambition, but they're woefully unprepared.
So in some respects, they've got the right attitude for certain elements, but they don't have the soft skill set to deliver their own expectations.
Not only that, but I'll tell you another thing that I think they're missing, which is going to be critical to success in the 21st century. And I'm not talking about just surviving, I'm talking about thriving. And that is, regardless of whether you are going into business for yourself or you're working for somebody else, what you really need to develop, and the school system does not develop this in people at all, is an entrepreneurial mindset. Yeah. You've got to be looking at things not in just your narrow little silo, but you've got to develop the skill, the mindset of being able to look at the business in totality. And when you do that, you start realizing how what you do affects more than just you, and more than just your department, and more than just your division. It affects the whole entire operation. And when you can view it in that manner, then all of a sudden, if you have the right attitude, you start treating things differently.
Yep. And it's so true. And as you know, you and I, I'm getting on in years a little more than you, but yeah, come in, Ali.
Yes, sorry, Bob, you brought up a very interesting topic on entrepreneurship. How early do you think schools or kids should start learning about entrepreneurship?
I think from the time they're old enough to think. In other words,
you said it starts at home.
I think it. Whoa, absolutely. I think it should. Sadly, Nev, you know, most people do not have. They have not been trained in that entrepreneurial mindset, and so how can you give away something that you don't have? But the schools can certainly do that, and whether that's a supplemental program or whether that is just part of the curriculum, they can certainly do it. It's just a matter of prioritization, and they have not prioritized that. But there's a disconnect in what employers need and frankly what the marketplace needs right now versus what people are learning. And you referenced soft skills. That is so critically important. It amazes me, and I know I had a friend that called our current Generation Text, and and they have amazing ability to do things on smartphones. Yeah. But ask them to pick up the phone and call and actually have a live conversation with people. That's like asking them to dive into a pit of spiders. I mean, it's such phobia surrounding that. And part of the reason is it's outside their comfort zone because it's not something they're used to doing. And yet, when you get out in the real world, you have got to have people skills. You have got to be able to effectively communicate with people. And if you can't, you're probably not going to move very far.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, you know, part of the YP2G program focuses on familiarity within the classroom of schools and universities. And no matter where you go, certainly in the Western world, and I know that it's moving further to the east now, STEM or STEAM, as it's now become, is a fairly common term within the schooling arena. And just hazard a guess, Bob, what the #1 skill set on the 10 STEM skills is? What do you think it might be?
Well, I don't know. I wasn't aware that there was an official list.
There you go.
But I can tell you that what it should be is communication skills.
And it is communication. It's the biggest business problem ever since I can remember, which is a long, long time ago.
It is.
It is. And it's the biggest problem in business. People do not know how to communicate, because the majority of people are communicating for themselves, not for the person they're talking to, or emailing, or texting. You know, you mentioned kids are great at text. You know, the fact when you see a text from your kids and it says laters, and they put LATERS, well, it's as many word letters as LATERS, but they've created their own language, and it's fine. You know, at 59 years old, I have to live with it. Do I like it? It's irrelevant. If I don't speak to them in their language, they're not going to understand. And I think that's one of the biggest problems in your first answer, and that's engagement. How do we engage with our audience? How do we engage with our employees? And I know you and I have had many conversations on this in the past, and you know, this is an opportunity for people to hear the reality of life and start to get an opportunity and get themselves up that ladder much quicker, get a better job, not to worry about these robots taking over, because guess what? A telephone's a robot, a PC's a robot. You know,
listen, without question, technology, since the advent of the Industrial Revolution, has been with us, and there have been since that time people saying, lamenting about how technology is going to take jobs. Well, guess what? It will. But what it allows is that unemployment allows somebody and sort of forces them to improve themselves in other ways.
Yep. That
they can do something that, one, is more enjoyable to them and adds more value. It used to be, it used to be everything that's done by machines now was done with manual labor.
Yep.
And machines just made it more efficient. But what it allowed was economic growth, because it allowed people to perform higher level tasks that they were not doing before. And without that impetus of technology replacing their labor, they wouldn't have done anything different, because it was outside their current comfort zone.
And ultimately, it's in essence been upskilling. So people have been actually encouraged to use their brains more, to be more interesting. To start thinking, which is, in my view, the whole point of education. But let's just think back to when you were a young guy. A couple of years ago. When you were 20. What advice would you have given to yourself at that time, knowing what you know now?
Knowing what I know now? Well, one, Nev, I would say I would be dangerous if I knew now.
Hey, that's fine. That's absolutely fine,
But look, I would tell my 20-year-old self that, frankly, shocking as this may seem, because it would have been shocking to me at that time, that excelling in an academic setting has very little to do with success in life. That would have been a total shock to me, because I was led to believe, because I was pretty good in the academic setting, I had been led to believe, holy cow, you cannot do anything but succeed because you're so good in school. Well, I learned from brutal experience that wasn't the case. And so I would tell myself to work diligently on improving your ability to relate to people. And the other thing that I would tell myself is work on developing unique thinking, innovative thinking. Learn how to originate ideas as opposed to just accepting the status quo. And the other, I'll tell you, the final bit of advice I probably would give myself, which I really needed when I was 20, is your mind's like an umbrella. It works better when it's open.
What a great analogy.
Well, remain open to new possibilities, and remain open to the possibility that maybe you don't know everything. Because when I was 20, I thought I did.
Yeah, you weren't alone. And don't think you and I were unique either. So
Right.
but being 20 was a fantastic time, and just like you, I was given this. It wasn't a belief; it was a promise. Go to university, get a good degree, get a good job. Frankly, I'm not too sure that that was true then, and I certainly know it's not true now, because there are even more people out there
definitely
with a
not
great
true
degree.
now. And you know, and 39 years ago, that may have been more true, but there was a lot less of a global economy then, and so you were competing with fewer people.
Yeah.
And it was just it was a little different world. Technology doesn't exist like it does now, but but I'm not sure it was 100% true then either. I still think that those who had infused into them an entrepreneurial mindset. You can think like an employee, which is I'll show up and work just hard enough so that they don't fire me. Or you can think like an entrepreneur and go, you know what, I'm going to provide more in value to my employer than they're paying me for.
Yep.
And guess what? Just like competing in the marketplace, whoever provides the most value in the product and services that they're offering versus their competitor, they're going to win the business most of the time.
Yep, nearly every time.
And for those people who are working as employees but are thinking more like an entrepreneur and adding more in value than they're currently getting paid for, guess what? They won't keep getting paid that for long, because that gets noticed because it's so unique. It's so different.
Yep, I'm with you all the way. Which,
Bob, just one question, quick question, as I'm looking at the clock also. We're pressed on time. I know you have to leave also. Coming back to communication, you know, in this part of the world, in Pakistan, mostly when we talk about communication, people only think from linguistic perspective that, you know, English proficiency, let's say, is really good. It has to be really good. But tell us, what is communication is about, and what quick tips would you like to give to, you know, young professionals, university students? What should they consider about improving their communication?
Probably the biggest thing is ask more questions than you make statements. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in that proportion, and remain open-minded about things. It's so easy. Everybody, I heard a multi-millionaire friend of mine say one time, he was doing some training. He said, as far as you know, you're right.
Yeah.
Right. The challenge is you've always got to be expanding your horizons, and you learn more by listening than you do by talking. And so listen a lot. The other bit of advice that I would give people, this is not exactly about communication, but I think it's relevant to the discussion, is that the only difference between you now and where you're going to be 5 years from now is the books you read and the people that you meet and interact with. And so, you know, we have a tendency to become like, think like, act like, expect like people that we spend a lot of time with. And so monitor those relationships and ask yourself, are the people that I'm spending a lot of time with, are they where I want to be? One of the things that made the biggest difference for me, guys, is I had the good fortune, I didn't view it at that way at that time, but I had the good fortune to graduate from college at a very tough economic time. And that led me to getting into the sales industry and then into business ownership. And I had the good fortune to spend some time with people who thought bigger than I did and expected bigger than I did. And the more I was around those kind of people, the more it rubbed off on me and influenced me.
Yep. I can totally agree with that. And the interesting thing is, as you came out into sales, I came out and worked as an accountant. So they couldn't be two further things apart, really.
It's almost the same, Nev.
You reckon? Well, let's not confuse everybody. But Bob, it's been an absolute delight for you to share your experiences with our team, which is growing and growing and growing the more members we get. But I'd just like to mention before we go how you and I met. You know, we've never actually met, not in person.
Right.
And that's what technology has done for us. You reached out on LinkedIn with a very nice introduction. The majority of LinkedIn requests I get is, I want to be part of your network. Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? You know, and as you said, you know, you need to choose your friends wisely, choose the people that are around you wisely. Otherwise, the vampires and the drains will suck the blood out of you. And I've learned a lot from LinkedIn, you know, despite being out of corporate life for 20 years, where even now I get this message that says, I'd like to join your network, which is an automatic one. You know, you don't have to think. 9 times out of 10, I will accept, and I'll ask the question, why? I won't be so blunt as you found out, but I'll ask the question, so what prompted you? Did I pop up in your in tray? You know, get them to think. And part of, I know your career and my career has been getting people to think. Because if they're not thinking, we've got our job is a lot harder. And whether that's sales or being an accountant, or it doesn't matter really. If someone else wants you to do all the thinking, my goodness, that is draining. Been there before, don't want to go there again.
Yeah, I'll mention real briefly, Nev. LinkedIn is a very interesting experience. It can either be the most frustrating waste of time, or it can be a really fun and productive experience. It depends on your approach. And I kept getting asked over and over and over by people, how do you have such success on LinkedIn? How do you get such engagement? How do you get referrals? How do you gain business partners? How do you, all of this stuff? And I'm like, you know, maybe I need to teach people this stuff. And you know, sometimes when something comes easy and naturally to you, you have a tendency to undervalue its importance. But I can tell you from doing that class, and now we made it available on demand on a learning platform called CourseCraft. But the success that people are having, I keep getting stories from people. Oh my gosh, Bob, you won't believe this. I, you know, employed your mindset, attitude, and methods, and it's over the top how good it is. And I said, yeah, how about that?
Yeah, it's a surprise. So, you know, it works for me, and you're following the methodology. Guess what? It'll probably work for you.
Well, one of the big things is that we talked about in that training was that it's not about you.
Exactly.
It's never been about you. And if you try to make it about you, that turns people off. Right? It's got, especially in your initial conversations, you've got to have the mindset of you're going to add value to them. And for people who want to have success, no matter what platform, no matter social media, doesn't matter, job interview doesn't matter, this cuts across that. You've got to have in mind this one question, and this drives everything that I do personally, and this drives everything that our company does. And if the people listen to this interview, they don't get anything out of it but this one question, this will change their life around for the better. And the question is, in what ways can I add more value to more people?
And frankly, that is a really good place to stop. I'm not going to say anything else. I'm just going to say thank you, Bob, for sharing. Thank you for listening. Tune in for the next assessment. Cheerio.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob, once again. Thank you very much. And unfortunately, we could not have a video interaction with you, but your audio was equally receptive and very, very intriguing. So thank you very much once again.
Yeah, I apologize about the webcam issues, guys.
No worries.
No worries. We'll do it next time, Bob. Take care.
Okay.
All right, once again, thank you very much. And folks, thank you for tuning in. Please stay tuned to www.yp2grow.com, which is your passport to grow.com. Our first batch for the program will commence on June 1st. The deadline is May 20th, so please visit and tune in to sign up. With that note, I would like to end and conclude. So thank you very much once again. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Neville. I'm going to sign off.
Take care, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.